Hey everybody, how you doing? I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from yourblackworld.net, and I am here with Miss Zaza Ali on the West Coast. How you doing today, Miss Ali?
Peace, King. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing extremely well, extremely well. Now, in case you guys don't know, every now and then I talk to Miss Ali because I think that she is one of the preeminent voices among Black women in this country. And if you know anything, if you follow me at all, you know that one of the things I've always said is that we need to elevate those voices from the Black female community that are taking us to places that we need to go as a people. And I think Miss Ali is right there in that category. So without further ado, I want to jump in and I want to just kind of get some of your thoughts on a couple of things that came to mind this week. There are literally so many things in my head that I want to put them out one at a time so it doesn't bombard you. The first thing I want to talk to you about is how, your perspective on feminism. Now, I've always said, as a father of daughters, I love my sister. My mother was everything for me. My grandmother, I talk about her all the time. I've always felt it was very important as a country that we fight for the rights of women, that we treat women with dignity and respect, especially within the Black community, because I think that when Black women are being mistreated by Black men, it causes them to feel that they have to run to white women to get support, from Black men who don't appreciate them for what they bring to the table. How do I balance this? Me as a man, where you've got the sexist influences of our society, my desire to support and strengthen Black women in every way that I can. But at the same time, I just can't explain, but I have this real disdain and discomfort with white feminism. It bothers me. Not all of it, but the extreme versions of it. As a Black man, I've never felt comfortable with that. I've never felt that it was healthy for me or my community. And people don't understand that. They'll think that if you're not in support of feminism, that you must be anti-woman. I know that's not true. So I was hoping you could help me understand why I feel the way I feel about feminism and how to kind of divide between, the ideals of standardized feminism as it comes from white women versus what we can do to really support and strengthen Black women as a whole.
Wow. Well, you and I share that same sentiment. You being a man and I being a woman, I understand the premise of women, particularly Black women, feeling the need to come together and create some sort of paradigm to uplift women, Black women in particular, as well as to combat our brothers, particularly, this community of us, people like you and I, who are striving to uplift our people. So I totally understand the point of needing that. We need it badly. And then, of course, there are, prominent and preeminent minds that come from a Black feminist perspective, like Bell Hooks and intelligent and high level. I've read some of the comments on your videos. Sisters, I'm attacking feminism, and even a sister came on my page the other day and told me, you shouldn't be attacking Black feminists. You should be siding with us. I knew these brothers were going to turn on you. It was only a matter of time. That thing. And I had to tell her, like, wait a minute. I don't attack feminism. I don't attack Black feminists. The problem is that we are linear minded in our thinking to the point where we veer too far to one side of the spectrum without being balanced, as you talked about. So there are many different elements in quote unquote Black feminism that just need correction. I remember I saw a video when Eric Garner, excuse me, was killed. And it was a woman who, identified herself as a Black feminist. And she was like, I won't cry for Eric Garner because of all of the Black women who have been killed in the United States over the past, however many years. So I can't shed any tears for Eric Garner. Like, what do you mean? That's our brother. Regardless to what you feel about the differentiation and treatment on Black men versus Black women and, the oppression that we face as Black women, like we just saw a Black man get choked out on camera in front of the world, and his family is receiving no justice. Like, how dare you open your mouth and say something like that? So, you know, that love-hate relationship that you have, it stems from the root of feminism. And I said this on your previous show, where I talked about the inception of the concept of feminism came out of the white women's suffrage. And then you have Margaret Sanger, you know, who was the chief archetype of feminism, who started it, maybe not on the trajectory that it's on now, but she definitely was one of the preeminent figures. And now you have black feminists and white feminists alike waving the banner for Hillary Clinton. Well, Hillary Clinton supported Margaret Sanger, and she's on record as saying so. So, you know, I think the thing that a lot of us forget is that, you know, white women run this country and the system of racism, white supremacy, jointly with their men. They do. It's a joint partnership. So it's not like, you know, white men are doing this all alone and, you know, the women are standing in the shadows. Yes, they are being marginalized and they are being oppressed by white men. But that's always been the case in European societies. And we can go back through Greco and Roman history. This is their culture. And I don't mean that to say that all white men are oppressing. You know, I'm not making a blanket statement, but I'm talking about when you look at the history of the people, this is the background of European culture. Just like if we looked at our culture right now and we look at the insanity in the minds of way too many of our men, we can look back at our history in Africa and ancient civilizations and say, wait a minute, we went left somewhere. This is not where we came from, who we are naturally as a people. So, you know, I think for me, women who represent, you know, feminism or who represent women's rights, I think that's beautiful. But I think it's just as important for us as women, even with our men being in their, you know, some of our men being in this maddened state of mind, that we have a balance and an equality of representing men's rights just as well as women's.
Well, you know, I like what you said about balance, and I think that balance is really something that is not applauded in an extreme society that we live in. I mean, I think social media has made our society more divergent because people tend to listen and talk to people who think like them. And they tend to, you know, sort of come up with this idea that says, if you agree with me, then you're cool. If you don't agree with me, then you're an idiot. You're crazy. You're Hitler. You're horrible, right? And I go through that a lot because, and in fact, it's funny because this week you and I both kind of had our interesting controversies, which to me, the controversy said we must be doing something right. And I had something where, you know, a good friend of mine, a homeboy of mine, Mark Lamont Hill, you know, took issue with something I said about feminism. And, you know, that picture, did you see that picture at the Huffington Post where they showed their editorial board? And it was like all women, mostly white women. I think there was maybe an Asian woman and an Indian woman in the room or something like that. There might have been a black woman somewhere. I couldn't tell. Maybe she runs their black site, you know, Black Voices, because, you know, they bought AOL Black Voices. And so, you know, a lot of the black media comes from white people now. Most of us know this, right? And I said, you know, it's interesting to me that, you know, what this picture says to me as a black man is it says that, you know, that there are certain environments that these feminists will not invite me into. They, you know, and if I'm invited in, I have to either emasculate myself in certain ways to make them feel comfortable, sign on to their agenda, or just deal with the fact that their priorities are going to come ahead of mine. And, you know, so I brought up Mark Lamont Hill because Mark actually worked at the Huffington Post. I said, you notice that all the time that Mark did those interviews at Huffington Post, he was always interviewing the black people. Whenever a black person came on HuffPo, it was like, oh, we're going to give him to the black guy. And what that is to me, that's just this sort of institutional ghettoization that occurs where you, for example, you have a university that says, sure, we're going to hire black professors. Let's put them all in African-American studies. We don't want them in biology. We don't want them in math. We don't want them in business, but we'll put them all in African-American studies. Well, the same thing happens in many of these institutions. So when I saw this picture of all these white women running the editorial board for one of the most influential media outlets in the country, what I saw as well was a group of people, white women, white feminists, who will eat up your affirmative action. I mean, eat it up, you know, like to where your black ass ain't getting in the building, and then will do what they want to do and talk down to you, just disrespect you in so many ways, talk to you in a very paternalistic fashion, tell black women that black men ain't nothing but Neanderthals, and destroy the black family. I am not a fan of feminism as it's seen. I'm not a fan of Hillary Clinton. I'm not a fan of, I'm certainly not a fan of this Margaret Sanger, Planned Parenthood stuff. And the funny thing about it is, it's not, it's nuanced in the sense that, do I think a woman should have a right to choose? Yeah, absolutely. But I don't like talking about a baby as if or an embryo as if it's just nothing, like it's getting a tooth pulled. You know how when they get that, when the language gets really extreme, it bothers me. Do I think women should have the same rights as men? Absolutely. But when you get to the point where you're creating a gender war, where I feel attacked on every front, then how's that going to build a family? How are we going to build a community out of that? How are the black men and black women going to overcome the struggles that we're faced as a community if we're attacking each other? And so what I think, and I'm gonna shut up and let you talk, is that we all have to fight, but we have to fight the right things. I think that as women, I appreciate it when women stand up and say, no, don't. Black men are not your enemy. Not, some black men are out of line, but not all black men are your enemy. But at the same time, I think it's important that men stand up and say, we got to respect our women, and so, even with my YouTube channel, when I bring you on my channel, I get backlash. When I bring other women on my channel, I get backlash. I get brothers saying, oh, well, you done punked out. You letting all these women on your channel, blah, blah. I'm serious.
You're a simp, boy.
Right. Exactly. I must be whooped or something, right? And I'm like, what the hell's wrong with you? Don't you understand that the essence of manhood is supporting and providing for and protecting women and giving them the freedom to succeed in this world and supporting that? And so to me, it was a natural thing. It wasn't like I just did it out of some sort of charitable mindset. It's something that makes our community stronger. We lose as a community when we don't support the voices of women. That's it. I'm going to shut up now, let you get your point in. As you see, I have a lot to say.
Oh, man, you said so much. Oh, my goodness. I think it was either Minister Farrakhan or John Henry Clark, one of them, I can't remember, that said, if you're not controversial in this world, you've already been compromised. So, the controversy doesn't bother me. It is the, having to grapple with the reality of how sick a lot of our people are. For people to call you a simp, or somehow look down at you because you're giving women a platform that don't, represent this full-fledged male man's agenda. This one brother kept coming on my YouTube video saying, well, yeah, I hear you saying all of that, but do you accept a concept of black patriarchy? Like, he kept asking me this, like, that's going to determine, how he conceptualizes me, whether I'm acceptable or not. Well, hell no. I do not accept a concept of black patriarchy. Like, let's put it on the record. That's insane. And the problem with that is that, are you still eating those peanut butter crackers?
They are so good, and I'm so hungry. I'm keeping it real. I do. Our videos are natural conversations, so if the peanut butter crackers are nearby while you're talking, I'm just going to enjoy my cracker and enjoy the speech. So please continue.
Do your thing. Oh man, you just totally threw me off. Okay. So, but the big issue around a lot of this stuff is that a lot of black males, and I'm specifying males opposed to men, have white men's minds. Mm. Like you are operating under the guise of, Marcus Garvey and Amos Wilson and, all of these prominent black figures who came before us, but you don't represent balance. You don't represent Ma'at. And our ancient civilizations were governed under the principle of Ma'at, which means balance, harmony, reciprocity, and truth. So anything that is not addressing, quote unquote, gender issues or male-female issues from a perspective of balance is not right and exact. So to me, the whole concept of feminism as it stands, I'm not denoting the fact that we need women to stand up for women. Like, being in this situation and this quote unquote controversy that's surrounding me right now, I'm like, oh my God, I need a ring of fire around me to separate me from the savages, because they literally will eat you alive and tear you apart. I need a vanguard of sisters around me, real women who are intelligent, who are warriors, who are revolutionaries, who are professional, who are dignified, who are classy, and who understand not only this war that some of our men have waged against us, why I have absolutely, well, yeah, I know why, but, to not only combat that, but to combat the insanity of a lot of our women. Like, how is it that I could make a video about Erykah Badu and talk about slut shaming and talking about the concepts of women holding other women responsible, just the mere concept of women holding each other accountable, and all hell breaks loose. Like, women are attacking me now, totally denying the intention behind what Erykah Badu meant, totally denying the intention of what I'm saying. Are you looking at the condition of young girls right now? Do you understand how so many of our daughters right now are so insecure and so lost? Does that matter to you? Does it matter to you that a large percentage of young black girls aged 15 to 14 to 21, are going to have multiple abortions in their young lifetime? Does that matter? Or are you just a proponent for Planned Parenthood because white feminism says so? And then, like, Mark Lamont Hill, like, I already have a gripe with this brother, because not a couple of days after Dr. Frances Cress Welsing was transitioned, after she passed away, he goes on record and he's like, oh, I love Dr. Welsing. I remember her from back in Harlem. She was this, she was that, but I can't really agree with her on her stance on homosexuality because she this, she that. Like, who are you representing? Are you a talking head for white feminists right now? Are you trying to keep your job? Are you trying to make sure that you can stay on prominent media television? Or are you representing what a black man should represent, which is one of our ancestors, a great woman, one of the greatest women who ever walked this planet, just transitioned. If I have something negative to say about her, I'm going to shut up and keep my mouth closed and only say things out of respect right now because my people are in mourning. You talked about the talking heads. It's like, you look at MSNBC, you look at CNN. The only time they really have black pundits, if you will, is when it's dealing with black issues. When you're looking at the Trump rallies and you're looking at, the conversation about Bernie Sanders versus Hillary Clinton, or you're talking about Syrian affairs, or you're talking about the crisis in Egypt, or, what's happening in Paris, you don't see black media pundits come on. They're not checking for Mark Lamont Hill's opinion on what's happening in Syria. So that is very
Melissa
telling.
Harris Perry. Remember when Melissa Harris Perry went through that?
Or Al Sharpton. Yeah. Or Al Sharpton. And watch how many people are going to lose their jobs after Barack Obama loses office, if they haven't already.
Yeah, so, they're already pushing them out. Like, they're already, like, they moved Sharpton's show to the weekend. Melissa's gone. But you're right. Yvette Carnell talked about that a lot in terms of the purging of MSNBC after the Obama presidency. And to your point, one thing Melissa specifically complained about is that she was in the same hotel that they were holding some big, Super Tuesday thing or whatever, or whatever it was. And she said they were flying in the white pundits to go downstairs and talk about it on the air. And Melissa was right there in the hotel. And they were like, we don't need your black ass. We already got somebody else. Go ahead, please.
Exactly. And, so that goes to, like you said, the feminists won't let me in. Like, we have to restructure, and I'm not saying this is your position, I'm saying this is mine, because I see this in a lot of our people. Like, white people's ice is not colder than ours.
That's right.
They're not better than us. You know what I mean? So what? So what if you don't want to have me on your show? So what if you don't respect me? Like, who are you? If we look at this society and this world that has been built, yes, we've had very great progress and technological advances and societal things that we can look to. But if we really take a close examination of the world that Europeans have built, yes, we need to totally go in a different direction, a very different direction. So for me, especially with black women, I'm trying to get our sisters to understand that is not a mindset that we want to link ourselves with. If black women know and understand that we have particular problems in our community, particular problems to black women, why identify yourself with feminism? Let's start something new. Let's create a new branch on the tree so we can identify ourselves, particularly because white women are never going to represent your agenda. They're never going to represent your issues. And if we can't see that by now as black women, then we are not paying attention. We are moving on emotionalism and not dealing with science and mathematics and logic, which is where we need to be in order to compete with this world.
I love that. And I agree with you. As I said, it's very weird. It's, when you try to approach all this stuff from a logical framework, from a position of blackness, from a position of fairness, from a position of freedom of thought, freedom of speech. Those are things I tend to believe in. It's almost like living in a gang-infested neighborhood where you're choosing not to be a Crip or a Blood. At that point, you might get killed by anybody, right? And with the liberals and the conservatives, in their different corners, and then you've got, the black community and the white community, then you got the conscious community versus everybody else. It becomes very difficult to operate in that space sometimes for me, because I say things and I pretty much have to tell people from the beginning, look, if you listen to me long enough, eventually I'll probably say something that'll make you mad. But just because I make you mad, or just because you disagree with me, that does not mean that we're not still a community. That doesn't mean that we still can't talk it out and share ideas. Specifically, one thing I'll say about, in terms of Mark Lamont Hill is that I have a lot of respect for Mark as an intellectual. He's a very smart guy. He's a hustler too. I remember, giving him advice a long time ago about because he actually called me in 07, 06 or something like that and said, how do I do what you do? I want to do what you do. I want to be on TV, whatever. And I told him what to do. And I give a lot of people the same information, and most of them don't actually execute. He executed. And that's why he's successful. I think he's a brilliant guy. And I consider him to be my friend. But I will say that at the end of the day, I think sometimes what happens, especially particularly say amongst many scholars, is that we feel that sometimes we have to shape ourselves into something white people want, so they'll let us into their institution. You know what I mean? And as you mentioned, we think the white man's ice is colder. So it's like, I want to be on MSNBC, so I need to act like these white folks on MSNBC. Or I want to go teach at Harvard University, so I need to figure out what Harvard wants, what they deem to be acceptable intellectualism, and I need to align myself with that. And what happens is your community loses. They lose the very best of what we have as a community, because we're not talking about what's happening with us. We're not talking about our issues. We literally become political puppets. You literally have black people reciting word for word what other liberals have told them to say, and it's funny. I mean, and I see it on the conservative side too. I got a real good friend who's a conservative, and she'll start talking. She's a relative, and I just said to her, I said, you know what? You sound just like Rush Limbaugh. Like I those sound like the Republican talking points for this week, because and that's what people are into now. And I would just encourage freedom of thought. Because as a community, for us to nation build, and I think that's probably why we work together, why we agree, is that, we both agree that black people can and should have a certain kind of sovereignty, intellectual, spiritual, political, where we just, in economic also, where we just say, look, this is who we are. This is where we at. Bernie Sanders, go away. Hillary Clinton, go away. Donald Trump, go away. This is who we are, and this is what we need, and this is how we're going to build it. And if you want to get on board with that, then we'll invite you in to talk about what we need. But if you come and talking that bullshit, then you can take that down the street. So anyway, I want to jump into asking you about this. Here I am. I give this a big long.
Wait, you have to let me respond.
You're the guest. I keep forgetting that you're the guest. Since you're the guest, I will zip it up and I will let you respond, and then I'm gonna ask you a good question. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, you said you made a lot of excellent points. And I don't want to, like, this is the thing that we do where, like, we don't have discernment. Like you said, Mark Lamont Hill, he's an intelligent brother and he's making his way. Like, of course, we big him up for the progress that he's made. Obviously, he's made strides in his own life. He worked to get where he's at. So we don't knock him just all out, But when you get off course, we have to call you on that. That same thing goes for me. So, disrespecting our elders and our ancestors, that's not going to be tolerated by anybody. And I don't care what, gain you've had in this world or not, as well as when you say and do things that are contrary to the rise of our people. Black people have a real savior complex. We do. We need, if it's not white Jesus, then it's Barack Obama. And if it's not Barack Obama, then it's Bernie Sanders. And if it's not Bernie Sanders, then it's Hillary Clinton. And if it's not Hillary Clinton, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, we have a serious savior complex. And sometimes the savior is black in the community, and I'm not, sometimes our savior is black, but we have a savior complex. Khalid Muhammad said, he was mocking our people. Where one time he said, He said, we say, I'm with the Democratic Party. Well, I'm with the Republican Party. And he was like, fool, you ain't even invited to the party. Like, we need to really understand we are not invited to the party. You know what I mean? We just had 8 years of a black president. Like, in my mind, I can't even conceive right now how our people are so excited and gung ho about this campaign and about this election. Like, are you serious? I can understand being motivated for local elections. You know, things that have something to do, something tangible and benefit to your local community, something where you can actually see change. But like the fact that we're still like knocking on the door, like, let me in, it's absurd. Politics or politricks is not the way. That doesn't mean that we won't have a few brothers and sisters to get in different government positions and different local, government positions and make change. Yes, we can make small change. But as a whole, 40 some odd million people, it's been shown to us over and over and over and over and over again that politics, particularly on a national level, is not the way that we're going to, correct this thing. You know, you talked about people's minds being shaped and molded, you know, in the image of modern media, right? Well, the same thing goes with this new, you know, hashtag revolution. We get hype for a few minutes. We have these emotional orgasms where we get hype off of, you know, whatever the story is of the moment, whether it's a black man being killed by the police, whether it's a young sister out in McKinney, Texas being swung around by her hair, whether it's hashtag bring back our girls, whether it's hashtag Trayvon Martin, or, you know, whatever the situation is, like we have these emotional orgasms, which normally are set by MSNBC and CNN and BBC and Reuters, all of these different media entities, and we actually think like we're coming out of the box with some information. But when a black man is hung in Mississippi or in Jasper, Texas, or in Athens, Texas, it flies right underneath the radar. So we've literally had black men in the past 8 years since Barack Obama has been in office, and even prior to that, that have been found hanging. We didn't hashtag it though, because Empire was on, because we were having scandal parties, you know. So there is a very clear and concise socialization of the mindsets of people where they give you the audacity to think that you have control, that you have a say in democracy, when you really have absolutely no control. This is where people like Mark Lamont Hill and they put black faces in front of you to make you feel, to make you resonate. They know we resonate with our own people, to keep us docile and to keep us calm while we're literally living in the midst of hell.
Well, you know, what I'll say in Mark's defense is I perceive Mark as complex. You know, I think, and I you know, just only because I've known him for a long time, and I want to make sure that that's laid on the table, so that people don't think that we're saying, oh, he's a Don Lemon or he's a coon. I don't think he's that. I think that I think that sometimes he's a little bit of everything to everybody, and I just encourage him to be more of himself, because I don't think that everything that comes to the world is a representation of who he is at the core. I mean, he's a smart black man who's had a lot of relevant experiences. And I think that what we as black men have to do is encourage each other to be strong enough to say, okay, you know, be who you're supposed to be. Don't feel like you have to in any way compromise who you are to fit in, to make money, to be on TV, to be accepted. And that's the thing. Even when you talk about progress, you know, many of us, for example, mistakenly believe that somehow being accepted by white people represents progress. I was on CNN. That's progress. So I'm more successful than you were because CNN likes me, but they don't like you. That's no different from high school. You're friends with the popular kids, so you're better than the kids who aren't friends with the popular kids, right? When the reality is that, you know, there are some of the most successful black people in this world were marginalized black people. You know, so for example, before you want to write Barack Obama in as one of the most successful black men in history, understand that there are other black men who were just as smart as Barack who said, I'm not catering to that racist bullshit, and they never got a chance to be president, and you somehow think that person's less successful because white people rejected him, but they didn't reject Barack. So again, no disrespect to Barack, but it is to say we have to even reframe what it means to be a successful black person. So I want to ask you this.
Go ahead.
See, and every time I talk, I want to ask a question, but you always go ahead.
You're inspiring thoughts. Neely Fuller Jr. said, if you do not understand the system of racism, white supremacy, what it is and how it works, you will if you do not understand the system of racism, white supremacy, what it is and how it works, everything you think you understand will be lost on you. And I'm totally messing that up.
Will confuse you or something like that. I think I know
Will
what you're talking about.
You. Exactly. Thank you. Everything you think you understand will confuse you. So we have to unpack this stuff. And it doesn't mean that, that Mark Lamont Hill is under attack. Absolutely not. I don't understand why this is the reality TV, time frame that we're living in where people feel like I got to choose sides. If you say something against Mark, I like him. You can't criticize anything he says. If he does, I'm either going to pick Boyce or I'm going to pick Mark. No, use discretion. When Boyce is on point, you ride with Boyce. When Mark's on point, you ride. Like, don't make it about the personality. Make it about truth. So this thing about making white people comfortable, like, we're done with that. I'm done with that. I'm not trying to make white people comfortable. I want to make my people comfortable in their lives, comfortable where they are. Like, how many of us are tired of working dead-end jobs for our whole entire lives? We watched our grandmothers do that. We watch our uncles and our aunties do that. Well, this is the world that has been built off of the backs of our ancestors that is now the system of capitalism just keeps fueling the fire. So you may not be working in a plantation, but you're working in a plantation. You know what I mean? So, and I think that I just want to stress this point. We don't understand our value as a people. If we really understood our power and our value as a people, we would be a lot less inclined to thinking about making white people comfortable and really looking at our own powerful. There is a worldwide global economy built off of Black urban culture. Do we understand that? Do we understand that there are young white kids in Paris right now and in Australia right now and all around the world who are wearing baggy jeans and white T-shirts and Air Force Ones and fitted caps to the side and, trying to be like Jay-Z and trying to be like Lil Wayne and, looking at our people. I mean, white women are getting their butts injected with poison right now. Black women are doing it too, but that's another story. They're having twerking classes around the world. Can you imagine if we, instead of teaching the world to be savages, if we taught the world to be civilized? That's where I'm at. That's my goal. That's your goal. In us, opposed to us looking so intently at white people, thinking that they built this wonderful world and they're these great people. No, look at you. Look at how marvelous you are. How dare Magic Johnson and all these great ball players hear this Donald Sterling basically call them, the N-word, and I'm trying to be careful about how I speak, but to hear them niggas, okay, in front of the world, and then you don't make any kind of move, you don't make any kind of power play. Everybody stands around and says, okay, well, Oprah and Sean Combs, Diddy, and all these people say, well, I can buy the Clippers, or I can buy the Clippers. Like, and then Larry Johnson comes out and says, Black people are having the wrong conversation. We need to be talking about starting our own league. Well, where are you at with that, Larry Johnson? Have you made any moves? Have you talked to any players? Have you done anything that would lead us, even just starting the conversation of moving towards having something of our own? Like to me, like, we are the flyest, you know what I mean? Sharpest, most intelligent, beautiful people ever, to me. Because I see the greatness in us. We have to get out of making white people comfortable and, wearing those tight European pants, when you go to the corporate office and, wearing that long weave because you want to make your boss feel comfortable. Like, be you. Thrive as a Black man and a Black woman, and everything will gravitate towards you. That's what we have to understand.
Well, I agree with you 100%. I mean, I think that we have a self-esteem problem. That's what it is. And yes. I think you alluded to this. When you know your self-worth, when you know you have value without validation from other people, then you're more comfortable in your own skin. I mean, the most important conversation I had to have with myself when I erased some of my own brainwashing was to remind myself that, I am somebody, even if they reject me, even if I don't get that important job, or even if they don't like me anymore, and that comes in handy. Just last week I gave a speech and the audience was 40% white. And there were 4 or 5 white men that walked out of the room in the first 10 minutes. And I mean, and I try to be diplomatic, and, I'm a nice guy. I'm not a mean person, but it's like, but I want to be truthful. So I politely gave them the truth. And so some of them were offended. And I was like, well, I guess if you're offended, that means I was doing my job, because you should be offended, because I'm even more offended by what your ancestors did